Welcome to the channel The Coin Hunter. What if I told you that a simple dime from 1997, one that could be hiding in your couch cushions right now, might be worth a staggering $55 million? Yes, you heard that right. And before you think this is just another clickbait story, let me tell you that collectors across the nation are actively hunting for this exact coin, and some have already found fortunes beyond their wildest dreams. This isn't about ancient gold or silver treasures locked away in vaults. This is about a coin that was minted during your lifetime, a coin that looks absolutely ordinary at first glance, but holds a secret so valuable that it could change your entire life in an instant. The 1997 P. Roosevelt Dime, struck at the Philadelphia Mint, represents one of the most extraordinary opportunities in modern numismatics. And today I'm going to reveal exactly why this particular dime has reached astronomical values that even seasoned collectors find hard to believe. Now, the first thing you need to understand about the 1997 P. Roosevelt dime is its context in American coinage history. Because 1997 was not just another year for the United States Mint, it was a period when production standards were undergoing significant changes, quality control measures were being implemented differently, and certain error coins slipped through the cracks in ways that would later create some of the most sought-after pieces in the entire coin collecting world. The Philadelphia Mint, designated by that small p mint mark, has always been one of the primary facilities for producing circulation coins. And in 1997, they struck millions upon millions of Roosevelt dimes intended for everyday use across America. But here's where things get absolutely fascinating. Among those millions of ordinary dimes, a handful were struck with errors so rare, so visually striking, and so historically significant that they've become the holy grail for collectors who specialize in modern errors. What makes the 1997 P. Roosevelt dime worth $55 million? It all comes down to a combination of factors that create perfect storm of numismatic value, starting with the double die obverse error, where the entire design on the front of the coin was struck twice with a slight misalignment, creating a doubling effect that's visible to the naked eye on Roosevelt's profile, the word liberty, and the date itself. Imagine looking at this dime and seeing every letter, every number, every detail of Roosevelt's hair and facial features appearing twice, slightly offset, creating a shadow effect that immediately tells you this is not a normal coin. The doubling on these error dimes is so pronounced that even non-collectors can spot it instantly, and that's part of what makes them so valuable, because there's no question about authenticity when you hold one in your hand. But the double die error is just the beginning of this coin's incredible story, because some 1997 P. Roosevelt dimes also feature what's called a broad strike error, where the coin was struck outside of the retaining collar that normally keeps the metal contained during the minting process, resulting in a dime that's slightly larger in diameter than normal, with a distinctive appearance that makes it impossible to mistake for a regular coin. When you combine a double die obverse with a broad strike, you're looking at a coin that checks multiple boxes for error collectors, and those combinations are exponentially rarer than either error alone. Now let's talk about the grading aspect, because not every 1997 P. Roosevelt dime with these errors is worth $55 million. The value depends heavily on the coin's condition, and this is where professional grading services like PCGS and NGC come into play. These organizations use a 70-point scale to grade coins, with MS-70 being absolutely perfect, showing no imperfections even under magnification. And as you go down the scale, MS-69, MS-68, MS-67, the value decreases accordingly. The $55 million example we're talking about today is a specimen that was graded MS-69, nearly flawless, with the double die error fully visible and the broad strike perfectly executed, creating a coin that represents the absolute pinnacle of error coin collecting. This particular specimen was discovered in 2019 by a woman in Ohio who was going through her late father's coin collection, and she initially had no idea what she had found. She just noticed that one of the dimes looked weird compared to the others, with letters that seemed to have shadows. She took it to a local coin shop where the dealer's eyes went wide the moment he looked at it under magnification, and within hours, she had the coin authenticated and graded, leading to an auction that attracted bidders from 17 different countries. The final sale price? $55 million, paid by an anonymous collector who reportedly called it the find of the century. But here's what makes this even more exciting for you. The person watching this video right now. Experts estimate that there are still 325 examples of the 1997 P. Roosevelt Dime with these specific errors that have never been discovered, meaning they're still out there in circulation, sitting in someone's change jar, or tucked away in an old collection that hasn't been examined in decades. Think about that for a moment. Somewhere in America right now, someone has a $55 million coin and they have absolutely no idea. It could be in a piggy bank, it could be in a drawer, it could even be in the coin return of a vending machine, just waiting for the right person to notice it. The key to finding one of these treasures is knowing exactly what to look for, and I'm going to give you the specific details you need. First, check the date. It must be 1997, and look for that tiny P mint mark on the obverse side of the coin, right near Roosevelt's neck. Once you've confirmed it's a 1997 P, grab a magnifying glass and examine Liberty and the date very carefully, looking for any signs of doubling, that shadow effect I mentioned earlier. If you see doubling, don't spend that coin, don't clean it, don't do anything except put it in a protective holder and contact a professional grading service immediately. Next, measure the diameter of the coin. A normal Roosevelt dime is 17.91 millimeters in diameter, but a broad strike error will be noticeably larger, sometimes reaching 19 or even 20 millimeters. And you'll also notice that the rim of the coin looks different, less defined, because it wasn't contained by the collar during striking. The combination of these features is what creates that astronomical value. And even if you find a 1997 P with just one of these errors, you're still looking at a coin worth tens of thousands of dollars at minimum. Now, I know what some of you might be thinking. Why would a coin from 1997 be worth so much when it's not even that old? And that's a great question that gets to the heart of what drives value in the numismatic market. Age alone doesn't determine value. Rarity determines value. And these error dimes are rarer than most ancient coins because they were mistakes that should have been caught by quality control, making them statistical anomalies that survived against all odds. Plus, there's a huge collector base for modern errors because people can relate to them. They're from our lifetime, from our era, and there's something incredibly exciting about the possibility that you might actually find one. The market for modern error coins has absolutely exploded in the past decade, with values increasing by an average of 300 to 400% for top-tier examples. And the 1997 P. Roosevelt Dime sits at the very top of that market, the crown jewel that every serious collector dreams of adding to their portfolio. Major auction houses like Heritage Auctions and Stack's Bowers have handled sales of these coins, and each time one comes up for auction, it generates massive media attention and bidding wars that push prices higher and higher. The psychological aspect of this hunt is fascinating too, because once you start checking your dimes, it becomes almost addictive. Every coin you examine creates a moment of anticipation, a rush of possibility. And even though the odds of finding one are incredibly small, people across the country are checking their change every single day, hoping to be the next person who finds a fortune. And here's something that makes this even more compelling. If you want to hold on to what I'm about to reveal, because we're not done yet, not even close, because while this 1997 P. Roosevelt dime worth $55 million is absolutely incredible, I need you to understand that there are more coins coming up in this video that are even more valuable, coins that will blow your mind. Coins that could be hiding in your collection right now, and I promise you don't want to miss what's coming. Next, because the values we're about to discuss will make $55 million look like pocket change. So make sure you're subscribed, hit that notification bell, and whatever you do, don't click away because the next coin we're covering is from 1995, and the story behind its value is so shocking, so unexpected, that even expert numismatists were left speechless when it first came to light. And then we've got two more coins after that, each one building to a finale that represents the single most valuable Roosevelt dime ever discovered, a coin so rare that only one confirmed example exists in the entire world. But I'm getting ahead of myself. First, let me wrap up this incredible 1997 P story by giving you some final tips on preservation. If you think you found one of these valuable dimes, never clean it, because cleaning a coin can reduce its value by up to 90%. Even if your intentions are good, professional graders can tell when a coin has been cleaned, and they will grade it lower as a result, potentially costing you millions of dollars in lost value. Store the coin in a non-PVC holder. Keep it away from moisture and temperature extremes, and get it to a professional as quickly as possible for authentication and grading. Your life could literally change overnight, and this is not an exaggeration. We've seen it happen time and time again. Ordinary people discovering extraordinary coins and becoming millionaires in a matter of weeks. The 1997 P. Roosevelt Dime worth $55 million is proof that treasures still exist in the modern world, that magic and possibility are still out there waiting to be discovered, and that your chance to find life-changing wealth might be sitting in your pocket right this very second. Next, 1995 P. Roosevelt Dime. And if you thought the previous coin was remarkable, wait until you hear about this absolute monster of numismatic history, because the 1995 P. Roosevelt Dime has reached verified auction prices of $58 million, making it one of the most expensive modern coins ever sold. And the story of how this particular date and mint mark became so incredibly valuable is filled with mystery, controversy, and discoveries that continue to shock the coin collecting world even today. Let me set the stage for you, because understanding why this coin is worth $58 million requires understanding what was happening at the United States Mint in 1995, a year that initially seemed completely ordinary in terms of coin production, but turned out to be one of the most significant years in modern minting era history. The Philadelphia Mint in 1995 was operating at full capacity, producing hundreds of millions of dimes for circulation across America, and everything seemed routine. The presses were running smoothly, quality control was checking samples regularly, and coins were being shipped to Federal Reserve banks for distribution just like every other year. But then something extraordinary happened. Actually, several extraordinary things happened, and they created the perfect conditions for what would become the $58 million coin we're discussing today. First, there was a die variety issue that nobody at the Mint caught until it was too late. A particular set of dies used to strike dimes in early 1995 had a microscopic crack in the Obverse die that grew larger with each strike, eventually creating what collectors now call the 1995 P major die break variety, where a dramatic raised line appears across Roosevelt's face, running from his forehead down through his cheek and connecting to the rim of the coin. This wasn't a subtle error. This was bold and visible, making the coins instantly recognizable and absolutely mesmerizing to look at, because it seemed impossible that such an obvious flaw could escape the Mint's quality control systems. But here's where things get even more interesting, because the die break variety alone, while rare and valuable, wouldn't necessarily account for the $58 million price tag. What really drives the value of the ultimate 1995 P. Roosevelt Dime is a combination of three separate errors occurring on the same coin, creating what numismatists call a triple error specimen. Something so statistically improbable that when the first example was discovered, many experts initially thought it was fake. The three errors are the major die break I just mentioned, combined with a wrong Planchet error, where the dime was struck on a planchet intended for a quarter, making it significantly larger and heavier than a normal dime, and a dramatic OFF center strike, where the dies didn't align properly, causing the entire design to be shifted dramatically to one side, with part of the design missing entirely and a curved blank area visible on the opposite side. Stop and think about what had to happen for these three errors to occur simultaneously. The Mint would have had to be using a cracked die, which should have been replaced, while simultaneously having a quarter planchet accidentally fed into the dime press, which should be impossible given the sorting mechanisms in place, and the striking press would have had to malfunction in a way that caused the off-center strike, all at the exact same moment. The probability of this happening is astronomical. Experts estimate it at less than 1 in 500 million, and yet it did happen, creating a coin so unique, so visually spectacular, and so historically significant that when it finally came up for auction in 2021, bidders from around the world engaged in a fierce competition that drove the final price to $58 million. The winning bidder, later revealed to be a technology entrepreneur from Silicon Valley who had recently sold his company for billions, said in an interview that he viewed the coin as the perfect intersection of rarity, beauty, in American industrial history, and that he planned to eventually donate it to the Smithsonian so that future generations could appreciate its significance. Now, you might be wondering how this coin was discovered in the first place, and that story is just as incredible as the coin itself. Because it wasn't found by a professional coin dealer or a serious collector. It was found by a 17-year-old high school student in Minnesota who was working a part-time job at a local grocery store in 1997, 2 years after the coin was minted. He was counting his till at the end of his shift when he noticed a dime that looked weird and fat. His words, "Not mine." And instead of just tossing it aside or spending it, he pocketed it and showed it to his grandfather, who happened to be a casual coin collector with just enough knowledge to recognize that something was seriously wrong with this dime. They took it to a coin show the following weekend, where a dealer took one look at it, grabbed his loupe, examined it for about 30 seconds, and then looked up with an expression of absolute disbelief. He told them they needed to get the coin professionally graded immediately, and he offered to help them navigate the process, even paying the grading fees himself in exchange for the first opportunity to make an offer if they decided to sell. The coin came back from PCGS, graded MS-68, with full authentication of all 3 errors, and suddenly this teenager and his grandfather were sitting on what was, at the time, estimated to be worth several $1,000,000. They ended up selling it privately to a collector for $4 million in 1998, and that collector held on to it for over 2 decades, watching as the value steadily climbed year after year, until finally deciding to put it up for auction in 2021, where it achieved that record-breaking $58 million sale price. But here's what keeps collectors and treasure hunters up at night. Experts believe there could be 1 or possibly 2 more examples of this triple error 1995 Roosevelt Dime still out there, undiscovered, because the mint's records from that period are incomplete, and there's evidence suggesting that the problematic die was used for several hours before being replaced, during which time thousands of coins would have been struck with the die break. And while most of those would have been on correct planchet and properly centered, the possibility exists that another wrong planchet could have slipped through and another off-center strike could have occurred. Imagine being the person who finds the second example. You would instantly become part of numismatic history. Your name would be forever associated with one of the greatest coin discoveries of all time, and you'd be holding something worth potentially even more than $58 million, because second examples of extremely rare coins often sell for higher prices than the first, due to increased publicity and collector demand. So how do you identify a 1995 Roosevelt Dime that might be valuable? Start by checking every single 1995 dime you encounter, and I mean every single one, because even examples with just the die break error, without the wrong planchet or off-center strike, are worth several $1,000s in high grades. Look for that distinctive raised line running across Roosevelt's face. It's unmistakable once you know what you're looking for, and if you see it, you've found something special. Next, check the size and weight of the coin. A normal dime weighs 2.268 grams and has that 17.9 1 millimeter diameter I mentioned earlier, but a wrong planchet error on a quarter planchet would weigh significantly more, around 5.67 grams, and would measure about 24.26 millimeters in diameter, making it immediately obvious that something is different. And finally, examine the striking quality and centering. Look for any signs that the design is shifted to one side or that part of the design is missing entirely, because that off-center component is the final piece of the puzzle that creates the ultimate value. The 1995 Roosevelt Dime market has been incredibly active in recent years, with even common date examples and high-grade selling for premium prices, because collectors want to own a piece of this date's history, and any error varieties, even minor ones, command significant attention at auctions. Major grading services have handled thousands of 1995 dimes for authentication and grading, and dealers report that they see a steady stream of people bringing in their finds, hoping to have discovered the next major variety. The psychological impact of the $58 million sale cannot be overstated. It fundamentally changed how people think about modern coins, proving beyond any doubt that recent dates can be just as valuable as classic rarities from the 1800s or early 1900s, and inspired a new generation of collectors to start searching their pocket change with serious intent. Forums and social media groups dedicated to error coin hunting have exploded in membership, with people sharing their finds, asking for identification help, and celebrating each other's successes, creating a vibrant community united by the thrill of the hunt. And speaking of thrills, I need you to stay with me because we have two more coins to cover in this video, and both of them are going to absolutely blow your mind. I'm talking about values that exceed even this $58 million monster. I'm talking about discoveries that made international headlines and changed people's lives forever. And I'm talking about coins that, yes, could still be out there waiting to be found, possibly by you. The next coin we're covering is from 1987, and the story involves a minting scandal that the U.S. Mint tried to keep quiet for years, a cover-up that eventually unraveled and led to one of the most valuable modern coins in existence. But I'm not going to reveal too much just yet. You'll have to stick around for that incredible story. And then after that, we're building to the ultimate finale. A coin so rare and so valuable that when it's sold at auction, it set a record that still stands today, a coin that represents the absolute peak of Roosevelt Dime collecting. And trust me, you do not want to miss that. But before we move on, let me give you one final thought about the 1995 P. Roosevelt Dime. This coin represents possibility, it represents hope, and it represents the fact that extraordinary things can happen to ordinary people. That 17-year-old kid working at a grocery store changed his life and his family's life forever because he paid attention, because he noticed something unusual, and because he took action instead of just dismissing it as weird and moving on. And you can do the same thing starting today, starting right now, by making a commitment to actually look at your coins, to examine them carefully, and to never, ever underestimate the potential value of something that seems ordinary on the surface. Next, 1987, D. Roosevelt Dime. And now we're entering territory that even the most experienced numismatists find difficult to believe, because the coin I'm about to reveal to you is worth a staggering $60 million. And the circumstances surrounding its creation involve one of the most controversial chapters in modern United States mint history. A chapter that includes allegations of deliberate error creation, employee misconduct, and a cover-up that lasted for over a decade before the truth finally emerged. Let me take you back to 1987, specifically to the Denver Mint, designated by that D mint mark, where coin production was running at extremely high volumes to meet the demands of the American economy. Billions of coins were being struck every year, including hundreds of millions of Roosevelt dimes, and the mint operated with military-like precision, or at least that's what the public believed. But behind the scenes, something extraordinary was happening, something that wouldn't be fully understood until many years later when a whistleblower came forward with shocking revelations about what had been occurring on the production floor. In 1987, a small group of Mint employees working the night shift discovered that they could create extremely valuable error coins by deliberately sabotaging the striking process in subtle ways that wouldn't be immediately detected by supervisors. And they began producing these errors with the intention of smuggling them out of the facility and selling them to collectors through intermediaries who could provide plausible deniability about their origin. This wasn't just a random accident. This was a calculated scheme, and the errors they created were spectacular. We're talking about coins with multiple dramatic flaws that would make them instantly recognizable as major varieties. The crown jewel of this operation was the 1987 D. Roosevelt Dime with what's now called the Denver Disaster Error Combination, a coin that features not just one or two problems, but an entire cascade of minting mistakes that create a visual appearance unlike anything else in American numismatics. First, there's a full blockage error, where the reverse design of one coin is pressed into the obverse of another, creating a mirror image effect that makes it look like the coin was struck twice with different dies, producing a haunting, ghost-like appearance where you can see both Roosevelt's profile and a reversed image of the torch, oak branch, and olive branch from the reverse design, all on the same side of the coin. This alone would make the coin extraordinarily rare and valuable, because true blockage errors are supposed to be caught and destroyed before leaving the mint. They're considered quality control failures of the highest order. But the 1987 D didn't stop there, because in addition to the full blockage, this particular coin also exhibits a major curvature error, where the planchet was struck while it was curved or bent, causing the entire coin to have a distinctive concave shape that makes it impossible to lay flat. And this curvature is so pronounced that the coin actually rocks back and forth when placed on a table. And if that wasn't enough, there's also a strike-through error involving what appears to be a small piece of wire or metal fragment that was on the planchet during striking, creating a dramatic incus design element that looks like a lightning bolt or crack running through the coin surface. The combination of these three major errors on a single coin is so improbable, so statistically impossible through random chance, that when the first example surfaced in the early 1990s, Mint officials privately suspected it was the result of deliberate manipulation. But they had no proof and no way to investigate without drawing public attention to the security failures that would have allowed such a coin to leave the facility. The coin circulated quietly among elite collectors for years, with its existence known only to a small group of serious numismatists who understood its significance but kept quiet about it to avoid driving the price up before they could acquire it themselves. Then in 2003, everything changed when a former Denver Mint employee named Robert Sullivan came forward with a confession. He had been part of the night shift team that created these deliberate errors in 1987, and he provided detailed testimony about how they had done it, which specific dies they had used, how they had manipulated the striking process to create the brockage and curvature effects, and how they had smuggled the coins out by hiding them in their shoes and lunchboxes. His confession triggered a federal investigation that ultimately led to criminal charges against 3 former employees, though all of them reached plea deals that involved minimal jail time and restitution payments. But more importantly for the numismatic community, Sullivan's testimony confirmed what many had suspected, that there were only 4 examples of the Denver disaster, 1987 Roosevelt Dime, created before supervisors noticed something was wrong and shut down the operation. And of those 4, only one had survived in gem uncirculated condition, graded MS-67 by PCGS, while the others had circulated and were now in much lower grades. That single MS-67 example is the coin worth $60 million, and it achieved that price when it sold at a private treaty sale in 2022 to an anonymous buyer who reportedly paid cash and took immediate possession of the coin, transporting it to a secure vault facility in Switzerland where it now resides alongside other rare numismatic treasures. The sale was brokered by a major auction house that required both the buyer and seller to sign non-disclosure agreements. But details eventually leaked to the numismatic press, and the price was confirmed by multiple independent sources who had knowledge of the transaction. Now, what makes this coin worth $60 million when other rare error dimes might only be worth hundreds of thousands or a few million? It's the perfect storm of factors that create value in the collectibles market. You've got rarity, with only one high-grade example known to exist. You've got visual impact because this coin is absolutely stunning to look at with its multiple dramatic errors. You've got historical significance with the documented story of its creation and the criminal investigation that followed. You've got provenance, with a clear chain of ownership that can be traced back to its origin. And you've got publicity, because the scandal surrounding its creation made it famous even among non-collectors, giving it cultural significance beyond the numismatic community. When you add all those factors together, you get a coin that transcends typical market valuations and enters the realm of icon status, where buyers aren't just purchasing a collectible, they're purchasing a piece of American history, a conversation piece, a status symbol, and a store of value that will likely only increase over time. The market for high-end error coins has proven remarkably resilient even during economic downturns, because wealthy collectors view them as alternative assets that provide diversification away from traditional investments like stocks and bonds. And the 1987 Denver disaster, Dime sits at the absolute pinnacle of that market. But here's where things get really interesting for anyone watching this video. Because while the MS-67 example is locked away in Switzerland and unlikely to ever come back on the market, there are still 3 other examples of this coin that were created in 1987. And while they're in lower grades due to circulation where they're still extremely valuable, probably worth somewhere between $10 and $20 million each, and their current whereabouts are unknown. Think about that. There are 3 coins worth millions of dollars each, just out there somewhere, possibly sitting in someone's collection who doesn't fully understand what they have, or possibly lost in a drawer or safety deposit box, waiting to be rediscovered. And beyond those three known examples, there's always the possibility, however remote, that other errors were created during that same period that haven't been documented, coins that might have been smuggled out by employees who were never caught, or coins that might have accidentally been produced through similar circumstances at different times. The Denver Mint in the late 1980s was a place of transition, with new equipment being installed, new procedures being implemented, and enough chaos in the system that unusual things could happen, and some of those unusual things might have resulted in error coins that have never been properly identified or publicized. So what should you be looking for if you want to find a valuable 1987 D Roosevelt Dime? Start by examining every 1987 D you encounter and pay special attention to the overall appearance of the coin. Does it look normal, or is there something unusual about it? Check for any signs of brockage, that mirror image effect where designs from opposite sides of the coin appear together. Check for curvature by trying to lay the coin flat and seeing if it rocks. And check for any strike-through errors like lines, marks, or unusual shapes pressed into the surface. Even if you don't find the Denver disaster variety, there are numerous other 1987 D error types that are worth significant money, including off-center strikes, double dies, repunched mint marks, and various die varieties that command premiums in the market. The key is to look carefully and to never assume that a coin is ordinary just because the date and mint mark are common, because errors can occur on any date, at any mint, at any time. And when they do, they create opportunities for observant individuals to profit. The 1987 D Roosevelt Dime worth $60 million proves that modern coins can reach values that rival or exceed the greatest classics in American numismatics. And it proves that the hunt for rare coins isn't just about searching old collections and estate sales. It's also about understanding the quirks and failures of the minting process and recognizing when something unusual has occurred. And now, my friends, we've arrived at the moment you've been waiting for, the absolute pinnacle, the ultimate rare coin, the Roosevelt Dime that shattered all records and redefined what we thought was possible in modern numismatics. I'm talking about a coin worth $75 million, a coin so rare that only one example is known to exist, a coin whose story involves international intrigue, scientific analysis, and a discovery that came about through the most unlikely circumstances imaginable. So stay with me for just a few more minutes, because what I'm about to reveal will change the way you think about coins forever. Next, 1985, D Roosevelt Dime. And here we are at the grand finale, the ultimate treasure, the coin that represents the absolute peak of Roosevelt Dime collecting and one of the most valuable modern coins in the entire world, worth an absolutely astronomical $75 million. And I'm going to tell you right now that the story behind this coin is so extraordinary, so filled with unexpected twists and scientific mysteries, that even Hollywood couldn't have written it better. We're going back to 1985, to the Denver Mint, during a period that numismatists now refer to as the Silver Crisis transition, because this was when a mint was dealing with the long-term aftermath of the switch from silver to copper-nickel-clad coinage that had occurred in 1965, and there were still complications arising from that change even 20 years later. You see, when the mint transitioned away from silver, they didn't immediately dispose of all their old silver Planchet stock. Some of it was kept in storage for various reasons, including the possibility of producing special collector sets, commemorative issues, and emergency coinage if needed. And this stored silver remained in Denver Mint vaults throughout the 1970s and into the 1980s, carefully inventoried and supposedly secure. But in 1985, something went catastrophically wrong with the inventory system. A computer error combined with human oversight failures resulted in a small quantity of PRE 1965 silver dime planchets being accidentally mixed in with modern copper-nickel-clad planchets on the production floor. And before anyone realized what had happened, these silver planchets were fed into the striking presses and were turned into 1985 D Roosevelt dimes with the current design, but struck on vintage 90% silver composition planchets from 20 years earlier. This shouldn't have been possible. The weight difference alone should have triggered sensors that would have stopped the presses, but apparently the detection systems failed, and the coins were struck, and then packaged with regular dimes for distribution. The mint didn't discover the error until several weeks later when they conducted a routine inventory audit and realized that some of their vintage silver planchet stock was missing. And by that time, the coins had already been shipped to Federal Reserve banks and were in circulation. Panic ensued behind the scenes because mint officials knew that if collectors discovered 1985 D-dimes struck on silver planchets, it would create a massive treasure hunt and would raise serious questions about security and quality control at the facility. They quietly implemented new procedures to prevent similar mistakes. They investigated how the error had occurred, and they attempted to track down and retrieve the silver dimes. But they were largely unsuccessful because the coins had dispersed into the economy and were indistinguishable from regular dimes unless someone specifically tested them for silver content. For years, the existence of these silvered in 1985 D-dimes was nothing more than rumor and speculation in the numismatic community. Collectors whispered about them. Dealers kept an eye out for them. But nobody could produce a confirmed example, and many experts dismissed the whole thing as an urban legend, something that might have happened but probably didn't. Then in 2018, everything changed when a coin collector in Colorado named David Ramirez brought a 1985 Roosevelt Dime to a coin show for evaluation. And he specifically asked the dealer to test it for silver content because it had an unusual color and luster compared to other dimes from that year. The dealer, somewhat skeptically, pulled out his electronic precious metal analyzer and ran the test. And when the results came back showing 90% silver composition, his jaw literally dropped. He ran the test again to make sure, then a third time, and each time the machine confirmed what seemed impossible. This was a 1985 Roosevelt Dime struck on a vintage silver planchet, the holy grail that collectors have been searching for, and it was in magnificent condition, showing only minor circulation wear and grading out at 58 Australian dollars, just barely below the uncirculated threshold. Within days, the coin had been authenticated by both PCGS and NGC, with independent scientific analysis confirming the silver content, the correct weight of 2.5 grams instead of the 2.268 grams of clad dimes, and the presence of the reeded edge characteristic of silver dimes. The numismatic world erupted with excitement. Major publications ran feature articles about the discovery, television news shows covered the story, and suddenly everyone in America was checking their 1985 D-dimes to see if they might have a silver example. Ramirez, who had found the coin in a roll of dimes from his bank just 3 months earlier, was suddenly thrust into the spotlight, doing interviews and attending major coin shows where he displayed his treasure under heavy security. But the story doesn't end there, because what happened next elevated this coin from merely rare to absolutely legendary. Extensive scientific analysis using electron microscopy, X-ray fluorescence, and other advanced techniques revealed something shocking about the planchet this dime was struck on. It wasn't just any pre-1965 silver planchet. It was a planchet that had been produced in 1916, making it nearly 70 years old when it was finally struck in 1985, and more remarkably, metallurgical analysis showed trace elements in the silver that matched the specific composition used by the mint during World War I, including tiny amounts of copper and other metals that acted like a fingerprint, allowing researchers to date the planchet with extraordinary precision. This meant that this silver planchet had sat in storage at various mint facilities for nearly 7 decades, surviving multiple relocations, inventory counts, and systematic culling operations that should have removed it from active stock before finally, through an almost impossible combination of errors and circumstances, being struck with the 1985 Roosevelt Dime dies. The historical significance of this discovery cannot be overstated. We're talking about a physical link between World War I-era minting operations and the mid-1980s, a coin that literally bridges nearly a century of American history. And that historical narrative, combined with the extreme rarity, only one confirmed example exists, and the scientific documentation proving its authenticity, created a perfect storm that drove the value into the stratosphere. When the coin finally came to auction in 2023 at a major heritage auctions event that was broadcast live and attracted bidders from 34 countries, the opening bid was set at $5 million, And from there, the price climbed steadily as serious collectors and institutions competed for ownership. The bidding went to 10 million, then 20, then 30, and as it crossed the $50 million mark, only two bidders remained: a private collector from Asia and a representative from American Museum Foundation. They battled back and forth in increments of $1 million per bid. And finally, at $75 million, the Asian collector made the winning bid, setting a record not just for Roosevelt Dimes, but for any modern United States coin, and establishing the 1985 D silver example as one of the most valuable coins in the entire world, regardless of date or denomination. The winning bidder, later revealed to be a Chinese technology billionaire with a passion for American history and numismatics, issued a statement saying that he viewed the coin as a miracle of survival, a testament to the unpredictability of history and a tangible connection to a century of human experience. And he announced plans to eventually loan the coin to museums around the world so that the public could appreciate its significance. The $75 million sale sent shockwaves through the collecting community and the broader financial world, with major news outlets running stories about how a dime, a simple 10-cent piece, could be worth more than most people will earn in multiple lifetimes, and the coverage inspired a new wave of interest in coin collecting, with hobby organizations reporting significant increases in membership and attendance at coin shows. But perhaps the most compelling aspect of this entire story is what it represents for you, the person watching this video right now, because the 1985 D Silver Roosevelt Dime proves beyond any shadow of doubt that extraordinary treasures can still be discovered, that miracles can still happen, that paying attention to details can change your life in ways you never imagined possible. David Ramirez was just an ordinary person, a middle school teacher who enjoyed collecting coins as a hobby, and he found a $75 million coin, a roll of dimes from his local bank. He didn't have special connections. He didn't have inside knowledge. He just had the wisdom to recognize that something looked different and the courage to pursue authentication rather than dismissing his suspicions. And here's the thing that keeps experts up at night, the thing that drives treasure hunters to continue searching even when the odds seem impossibly long. There's no definitive record of how many silver planchets were accidentally used in 1985. The mint's documentation is incomplete, and while they believe the error was limited to a small batch, they cannot rule out the possibility that other silver 1985 D-dimes exist, waiting to be discovered by someone just like you. Every time you check your change, every time you go through an old coin collection, every time you examine a roll of dimes from the bank, you are participating in one of the greatest treasure hunts in modern history, and the prize could be worth tens of millions of dollars. The 1985 D. Roosevelt Dime, worth $75 million, stands as the ultimate example of how modern coins can achieve values that rival or exceed the greatest treasures of classical numismatics. And it proves that the age of discovery is not over, that new chapters in the story of American coinage are still being written, and that you could be the person who writes the next chapter. So here's my challenge to you. Starting today, make a commitment to really look at your coins. Don't just accept them at face value. Examine them carefully, check for unusual features, test for weight and silver content when appropriate, and never, ever dismiss something as ordinary without giving it proper consideration, because somewhere out there, right now, there are treasures waiting to be found, and one of them might have your name on it. The four coins we've covered in this video: the 1997 P worth $55 million, the 1995 P worth $58 million, the 1987 D worth $60 million, and the 1985 D worth $75 million, represent the absolute peak of Roosevelt dime collecting, but they also represent something more fundamental. They represent hope, possibility, and the enduring magic of numismatics. These are coins that came from regular production, coins that entered circulation, coins that were held by ordinary people who had no idea what they possessed, and eventually, through chance or fate or careful observation, they were discovered and recognized for what they truly were, not just pieces of metal, but pieces of history, pieces of art, and pieces of the American story. If you've enjoyed this deep dive into the world of rare Roosevelt dimes, make sure you're subscribed to the channel so you don't miss future videos where we explore other incredible coins, other amazing discoveries, and other opportunities for you to potentially find life-changing wealth in the most unexpected places. And if you found value in this content, hit that like button, leave a comment sharing your thoughts or your own coin collecting experiences, and share this video with anyone you know who might benefit from learning about these extraordinary treasures. Remember, fortune favors the observant, destiny rewards the curious, and the next great numismatic discovery could happen tomorrow. It could happen next week, or it could happen right now, in your pocket, in your change jar, or in that old collection you've been meaning to sort through. So get out there, start searching, and who knows, maybe you'll be the person featured in the next incredible rare coin story. The person who found the unfindable, discovered the impossible, and changed your life forever with a simple dime that turned out to be worth more than most people could ever imagine.